after a lengthy, constant sequence of Meccan revealed chapters, we now have a Medina revealed chapter, Surah Noor, chapter 24. It was a chapter revealed in Medina Munawwara. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions the success of the believers in the previous chapter. And here, how to be successful is to carry out the commands of Allah. There the chapter discusses preservation of chastity. Here is the harms of adultery and how to preserve our chastity. And there's so many etiquettes in this chapter. Preservation of chastity, protecting the gaze, seeking one's permission before entering the home, knocking the door politely, seeking permission thrice, not looking into people's homes, and so forth. So beautiful. Ethics of life and etiquettes of how to uplift and rear our children and so forth. But predominantly, this chapter is concerning chastity, and when we remain chaste and we preserve our chastity, Allah will grant us Noor and the Noor of Iman. That's why in this chapter we also find the ayah of Noor, Allahu Noorus Samawati wal Ard. In this chapter we find in verses 2, Allah mentions Azaniyatu waz-zani. Allah mentions the female adulteress first, and Allah mentions the male second. And when it comes to theft, Allah mentions the male first and the female second. Because this is to instill inspiration in a person, that how can a woman be so shameful? Generally, she should have bashfulness in her, haya in her. That's why the Qur'an Kareem mentions the female first, to instill an encouragement for her that she should make sure she doesn't lose her haya, because once she loses it, she can lose it totally. Allah give us all tawfiq to make tawbah. And Allah mentions the male first when it comes to theft, instilling in man that Allah gave him strength and ability. How can he steal? He should rather earn and work hard, and Allah will give him barakah. Now to take something that is not his, it is shameful. So Allah mentions the male first. And the punishment for adultery is mentioned in this chapter. And in this, one of the verses mention that the zani is such that he would only wed a zaniya or a mushrika, and vice versa. Under this verse, there's an amazing incident that took place in the life of the Sahaba Kiram radiallahu anhum. The great Sahabi Hazrat Marthad bin Abi Marthad al-Ghanawi radiallahu anhu. This Sahabi was very well built and strong, and he made hijrah to Medina Munawwara. But what he would do was, he would very often travel to Makkah Mukarramah to assist and help the suppressed Muslims who were locked up in dungeons, who were put through torture, who were chained and shackled. He used to stealthily travel to Makkah Mukarramah, unshackle them, untie them, and free them. And those who were badly injured among them, he used to help and carry them and assist them, and they would come to Medina Munawwara. On one occasion, on one such journey, what a meritorious deed, radiyallahu anhu, he finally arrives in Makkah, and a woman that knew him prior to his Islam, her name was Anaq, she sees him and she says, Marthad, come, bit indana layla, one night, spend one night, come. And she sees him to be reluctant, because he's a changed person. Islam changes a person. A person doesn't do anything out of wedlock. And this is the beauty of deen. It makes a person so special. More so in the Sahaba radiyallahu anhum. And all of us, if we love the Sahaba, we will follow them. We will follow them. And through Iman, through deen, we'll stay away from sin. So Allah Akbar, Hazrat Marthad refuses, that this is out of wedlock. In marriage, it's another thing. She's not interested in anything like marriage and so forth. But when he refused, she was upset. And now he left, and she exposed him. So as he rescued the Sahaba Kiram radiallahu anhum, the Meccan soldiers hear of him, and they chase behind him. And he says, they almost captured me and arrested me, but Allah saved me. He hid in a cave, and Allah protected him. And he remained there silently for a long period of time. And then when everything was settled and calm, he escaped and he returns to Medina Munawwara. And these verses were revealed where he sought about permission, marrying, like Anaq, marrying her. But the ayat allude to a fact that, and this is a lesson for all of us, that if a man wants to change and a woman doesn't want to, it's not suitable to marry such a woman, because she'll be with you and then she'll be with others. Unlike the case where a person was also involved, Allah gave him tawfiq of tawbah, and a woman also makes tawbah, and they both are changing, then that is encouraged. And what we learn also, look at the great Sahaba, the greatest of Allah's creation after the Anbiya alayhimus salam. But we learn these lessons of their life, how Islam changed them, how they became the best, and how when the fitna came, when the test came, how they overcame that challenge and difficulty with the consciousness of Allah, for the love of Allah, that Allah, I will remain chaste for your sake, that even one can somebody tries to entice one, but he remains firm for the sake of Allah, like Hazrat Yusuf alayhi salatu wassalam, subhanallah. There's a very interesting incident in the life of Fudala bin Umair Laythi. He says, radiyallahu anhu, prior to his Islam, he actually noticed Rasulullah on the occasion of Fath Makkah performing tawaf, and he thought to himself, let me end off the Nabi of Allah. And so many people tried this, and Rasulullah's akhlaq and his interaction won them over to Islam. So Fudala, prior to his Islam, pretended Islam, and he is walking behind Rasulullah whilst Allah's Nabi was in the tawaf circumambulating, and he was hiding a dagger in his cloak. Allah's Nabi looked at him and asked him, Fudala, what are you devising in your mind? ماذا كنت تحدث به نفسك? What you planning? What you devising? He says, nothing at all. لا شيء. I'm only making the dhikr of Allah. كنت أذكر الله. Nabi turned towards him. Allah's Nabi could have punished him, could have got him court-martialed, could have got him killed there and then. Allah's Nabi turns towards him with compassion and love and makes dua for him. He says, when Allah's Nabi made dua for me and placed his hand on my chest, there was nothing more beloved to me than him, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Besides Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I spend my day in his company. He became a sahabi, and every sahabi is sincere, so he became a sahabi, radiyallahu anhu. He says, that evening as he returns home, an old friend of his prior to that calls him, Fudala, halumma ila al-hadith. Come, let's chat, let's discuss, let's talk. Hadith is to talk, discuss. Na'udhu billah, like boys and girls want to do out of wedlock. Now she was prior to his Islam, she would do this. Now she's enticing him to do the same. So he said, I've changed my life. I've become Muslim. I can't do this out of wedlock. So she tried to convince him, and he walks away rendering words, telling her that I changed by Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Go by the Kaaba Sharif, meet Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Allah's Nabi's company will change you too. And the words, Allahu Akbar, he uttered were, قالت هلم إلى الحديث فقلت لا قالت هلم إلى الحديث فقلت لا يأبى عليك الله والإسلام لو ما رأيت محمدا وقبيله بالفتح حين تكسر الأصنام لرأيت دين الله أضحى بينا والشرك يغشى وجهه الإظلام. He says in his words that she calls me to chat, but I refuse. Why do I refuse? He's telling himself, because Allah doesn't want it. Ya Aba alaykillah. Allah refuses this. Islam doesn't allow it. Look at Sahaba. Their lives were governed by Islam, by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's pleasure. Then he says, if you had to only see what I saw by the Kaaba, the beauty of Islam and the darkness of shirk, and you would see how deen is triumphant and victorious and pure, and shirk is utter ruination and darkness, you would find, truth in that. And he walks away, subhanallah. So how Sahaba overcame fitna for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's pleasure. And we also have to stay away from sin, because this is the chapter concerning chastity. An interesting here is also the matter of li'an and so forth. Allah give us tawfiq to discuss. And very importantly in this chapter, subhanallah, the Qur'an Kareem speaks of the maqam and the status of our mother, Hazrat Aisha, Ummul Mu'mineen, radiyallahu anha, subhanallah. What a great sahabiya, the mother of the believers, subhanallah. When the hypocrites falsely accused her, subhanallah, and how patient she was, how she turned to Allah. And Allah revealed verses in the Qur'an Kareem defending our mother Hazrat Aisha radiyallahu anha. La ilaha illallah. How great are the Sahaba Kiram radiyallahu anhum, and how dare those who claim Islam and they attack the Sahaba Kiram radiallahu anhum, they actually defying the Qur'an Kareem. Because if you attack a Sahabi and the Qur'an stands up for Sahaba and defends Sahaba Kiram radiallahu anhum, that means your claim in one's belief in Qur'an is a lie and a fabrication, is a lie and is hypocrisy, is lies. Allah give us true love for the Sahaba Kiram radiyallahu anhum. Wa sallallahu ala nabiyil ummi bi rahmatika ya arhamar rahimin.